Happy holidays, everyone. I hope this week you're getting some time to spend with the people that you love who are important to you in your world and that you're not working. I know that many of you are working during this period, and if you are, thank you. There are lots of things that need to keep running regardless of what the calendar says. But for those of you who are off today, I thought we would do a bit of a special video celebrating the season with a thematically appropriate road trip discussion. Namely, taking a Chevrolet Bolt EV all the way to the Arctic Circle, because that is, of course, the only vehicle that you are going to make that kind of road trip in. Now, Kate, you and I have known each other for many years. You have known me for more than half of my life. I've always wanted to do road trips, right?
Yeah, you always get super excited about road trips. I'm always super excited about the theory of doing road trips. The actual practical experience tends to involve me getting home after them and going, oh, thank God.
So I think it started. I'm going to blame Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman. So the year is 2003, 2004. I am spending a lot of time in a hospital and then subsequently resting and recuperating. And I needed to watch lots of television. And so Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman doing their long way round kind of is my formative road trip TV series. And since then, I've become a serial consumer of very fun road trips. And because of who I am and the age in which we live, I've always wanted to do one, but never actually got around to doing it. The best I've ever done is a road trip from one side of the US to another. But joining us for our Christmas special today are two wonderful folk who actually made my little coast-to-coast trip look like an afternoon jaunt. Joining me today is the wonderful Joseph Quigley and also Micah Leier, who have driven a Chevrolet Bolt EV, a stock one, not fancily modified, although we'll come to the modifications later, all the way to the Arctic Circle from the Great Lakes. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Joe, I've got to ask you, why?
So a little bit of backstory, but Micah and I grew up together. We both grew up overseas, so we are quite familiar with long road trips on dirt roads. And really the only thing different was it was in an EV. The why was I've also spent way too much time watching Charlie Borman and Ewan McGregor. I love those shows. They got me through the pandemic. And I just started thinking with the one episode season that came out in 2019 where they drove electric motorcycles from South America to Los Angeles. Like, I have an electric car. I want to go somewhere. I've always wanted to go somewhere far and distant and a challenge. Like, again, I am not dismissing anyone's experience driving from coast to coast. I have not yet done that. I would love to. But it's one thing to drive coast to coast on highways. It's another thing to drive coast to coast when you're like, I don't know if I'll make it. Like, there was quite a chance that we were not going to make it. And that's what attracted me to it. I'm sure Micah's story might be a little bit different for how I roped him into it, but that was the underlying motivation for me, at least.
Yeah, we were chatting back and forth because we stay in touch. And Joe had mentioned wanting to go on a long distance trip in his Bolt, just because it's kind of a crazy thing to do. And I had mentioned that you can drive to Tuktoyaktuk now on the Arctic Ocean, which is a fairly newish road that gets you all the way there. And it's also got some really long stretches of just absolutely nothing. So it seemed like one of the craziest places we could probably do it in North America. So I just kind of developed from there.
And you started, Joe, you actually have two EVs now,
Yes.
right? So
I'm happy to explain that if you want.
Yeah, please do, because your other EV, I think would have probably been a better choice than the wonderful, beloved Chevrolet Bolt. And I should be clear here, for those watching, I have owned 2 Chevrolet Bolts. So my original Chevrolet Bolt EV that I bought in 2017, I had that all the way through until I picked up an F-150 Lightning. My beloved has a 2017 Chevrolet Bolt EV Premier, which is kind of our run around town. But you have a faster charging, more capable EV, don't you?
I've got one of those newfangled Hyundai Ioniq 5s, which coincidentally also made it to the Arctic Ocean on the same road as we did, sponsored by Hyundai. I was not sponsored, so yeah, I can go into that story though.
Please do.
All right.
Yeah.
So originally, like Mike had said, I was like, I want to do this in my Bolt. And then pretty much 2.5 weeks after I made that decision, I took my Bolt to the shores of Lake Michigan just to take some pictures of a lighthouse. It got down to -10 Fahrenheit. It was extremely cold. I forget what that is in Celsius, but brutally cold with the wind chill and everything. I drove home, and then the next morning I turned on the car and it said propulsion limited. I forget what the error message is exactly, but any Bolt owner who bought it before the recalls knows that that is a bad thing to see. And short story long, I took the Bolt in to get serviced. No one could see it. Just here in this area of Michigan, each dealer only has like one EV technician, so I had to drive to a whole nother city, like 30 miles away. It took them 3 weeks to see me. It took them 1 day to diagnose the issue. Needs a new battery. And then it took Chevrolet 3 months to get me a new one. Now that's the short story. The long version of the short story is come May, when I called Chevy's EV concierge and was like, hey, it's been 12 weeks now. I haven't heard anything. Do you have an update? And they said no. At that point, I was just looking around on internet and legalese, and at least in Michigan, I was eligible for a buyback. So I said, hey, I need a working car. They gave me a loaner, but I still wanted like my car, a car. I wanted a car I could drive to the Arctic Ocean. I can't take a rental there. And it would have been fun. The Chevy Malibu, it would have been great fun.
To be fair, all rental vehicles are off-roaders, so
They are. They
fine.
really are.
So I initiated the buyback, and we started doing all the paperwork. And I was running close to time. I'd already scheduled, roughly a month off work and with my family and everything. So the timeline had to be met. I wanted to do it in an EV, even if someone had already done it in that EV. It was just for the experience, just to hang out with Micah and do something I'd never done before. That was actually challenging. Because of the timeline, even though I hadn't officially signed the paperwork to have Chevy buy the Bolt back. And one other thing. The reason why I initiated the buyback was Chevy said it could be another 3 to 9 months after the first 3 months until you get your battery. And so I was like, I'm not getting it. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, if I don't have a car for a year, let's do a buyback. I'm buying a different car. Anyway, so we initiated that. They started the process. I got the reference claim and everything for the buyback. And I had roughly 5 weeks to get a car ready for the Arctic Ocean. Now I had set up all my cameras and everything, the microphones. I knew exactly where I spent so much time trying to figure out how do I film this thing so that I can be exhausted, or Micah can be exhausted and still manage to turn things on. It was about simplicity and having some kind of recording system and not having to. We didn't want to tear the whole car apart every night, because who knows how safe it was to park in places. So I needed something easy to put up, easy to take down, and I had that system worked out for the Bolt. Now it's I have to figure all this out. I may need to buy more filming equipment or other things for this other car, whatever that car may be. And I just so happened to find just nearby an Ioniq 5 in great condition, low mileage, really good price for its mileage. And I essentially impulse bought it. And 2 days after I bought it, I get a call from the dealership that I dropped the car off, and they're like, hey, your Bolt's ready, come pick it up. And I was like, oh. But I was not disappointed at all. I was actually elated because I have the car. No one's ever. I was really hoping to do this in a car no one had ever done before. People have done it in Teslas, they've done it in Model 3s, they've done it in Cybertrucks, they had just done it 2 months before in a Hyundai Ioniq 5. No one wants to be the second person in the world to do something. And while you are totally welcome to be the second person if you're enjoying the adventure. Like I was hoping to nail two birds with one stone. And so I was like, I have two cars. This is a very first world problem to have, but I have the car I really wanted. It's got a brand new battery. Because one thing I was worried about, having bought a Chevy recall, certified whatever, is that maybe the battery could die on me out in the Arctic. That would be bad. Would make for really good content, but it would like defeat the purpose of hopefully making it there. So I was like, this is the best of both worlds. Because I bought it with 16,000 miles on it. Now the clock's been reset with the battery. It now has almost 30,000 miles on it, odometer wise, but the new battery pack is back to like 16,000 miles after all of this is said and done. So it was a win-win for me. And like you said, I now have a fast charging electric car that I can drive in the winter to see family.
And you also have a vehicle to load capable EV as well,
Yes.
which is something else that the Bolt cannot easily do. But I know you took a little mini inverter with you. You packed that little tiny Bolt up to the brim.
Up to the brim.
With all the gear.
Oh, you did.
And Micah, when Joe suggested this trip to you, what was your initial reaction?
I was all in. I am all for doing stupid things that are interesting and different, even if they do not make sense. And so this was like totally up my alley. So
The Bolt is actually, despite having, a 55 kilowatt maximum charge rate, is still, I think, one of the best engineered EVs of the last decade. It's not like a Tesla. It doesn't like blow the pants off other people on the road. It just gets on and gets the job done. And when I went to the original launch of the Bolt, I got to speak to the British designer who worked on the Bolt. And I kind of fell in love with that car immediately because it reminded me very much of the little tiny hatchbacks that I grew up with in the UK. Mm-hmm. And it felt like it was filling a niche in the US that is not really catered to by many automakers. How did you find the driving experience? Because I've recently got back from doing a 4-day round trip to LA and back in our Bolt to go and see the new Bolt. And I enjoyed the experience, but you're spending a lot longer in the car. You're spending a lot longer in unusual and maybe more inhospitable places. You don't have a fast charger every, 50 kilometers. You really had to plan this trip, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and you also experienced it without heating a lot of the time.
Yes.
Yeah,
tell us
just
about
using
that.
the surface heater and things like that, the seat heaters and and I note the steering wheel heater only when you have both hands on the wheel. So.
Yes, both hands on the wheel, or it has to turn off.
Because you actually hold on with both hands instead of just sitting with one hand on like people tend to do.
Yeah, between the two of us, he sounds far more safety conscious right now than he was at the time.
Well, I'm not saying. I am saying it's good because it forces me, who's not a very safety-minded person often, to actually have two hands on the wheel because I don't want frostbite.
The car that I replaced the Bolt with was a Mini Cooper S, a 2006 model. And I love that car. I just did not want to pump more money into maintaining it because it's a BMW and it's very old. But the driving in that is just sublime. Like I still want one again, maybe in like 5 to 10 years when I have time and money again to put into it. And surprisingly, because of, like you were saying, like the Bolt reminds you of those European size, especially like being a hatchback, like it's just small, it's compact. For what it is, it's sporty. It's not going to win any drag races, but like I had no problem getting up to speed on the highways. Like I love that aspect. And then just the handling, the suspension could probably be a little tighter if I was wanting it to be comparable to the Mini Cooper. But I love that thing. Like I'm not selling it, even though I don't really need another car. Like I'm just keeping it because it's a really, at its price point and for what it can do, it other than the sentimental value of taking to the Arctic Ocean, like it is still an extremely practical car. I've hauled a refrigerator in it, taken all the seats, squished them in some way. You saw like in our videos how much we loaded it up. Like it's an extremely practical car, and with a few modifications, it could even be a little extra. Well, I don't
So
know.
you-
I don't want to foreshadow anything that I'm not committing to, but I have options at my disposal now.
When I got back home and had to drive my combustion engine early 2000s car around, how much worse it felt. And like you were saying, it doesn't have that much like pickup or zoom to it compared to other electric cars.
Right.
And it's still compared to a normal old school gas car. It is quite nice to drive. So don't undersell it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a really common experience, is that even your kind of most average, most uninspiring EV actually outpaces pretty much anything gasoline powered.
Yep.
We have a 2015 Soul EV, which is the most prosaic vehicle you can get. And, you know, I drive it for a bit and I'm like, it's okay. It's fine. Like, I don't mind it. But then you know, we get in a gas car with someone else. And I'm like, why are we going so slowly? Why is it so noisy? What's going on? This is horrible.
What's this jolting all about?
Yeah, you know how GM is like, oh, your replacement car is another Chevy, and driving the Bolt and then being in that loaner Chevy Malibu, I was just like, oh, it was so underpowered.
It is just bizarre how your brain kind of gets used to driving an EV and the world with EVs. So my neighbor had something happen at their house yesterday or the day before, and they came over and they wanted to see our security cameras. And the person who came over, who was doing something they shouldn't have done, turned their vehicle off before backing down their driveway. And I didn't pick up on the fact that they turned the engine off until I'd watched it like 5 or 6 times. And I was like, huh, they're not in an EV. They purposely turned off the engine so they wouldn't be heard. I was like, that didn't cross my mind. My neighbor was like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
So I think you now have a place to send your Bolt if it needs to be driven. You just send it over to Micah for a bit, and I'm
He
sure
talked
it will
about buying it.
But you guys changed your load plan. So when you left, you had a rear hitch mount, you had spare wheel, you had all kinds of good stuff. What happened, Micah? Because halfway through, you just kind of got rid of the stuff.
So partway through, we actually stopped for a little bit. I stayed at my cousin's house in Edmonton, and Joe went back to be with his family for a while and do work things. And so while I was there, I was just kind of evaluating the ground clearance we had, especially with the extra weight behind the axle, which we had driving it on dirt roads and stuff like that. I would lose traction on the front wheels because it was levering the front up. There was very little ground clearance on the back, especially the approach angle, or I guess it's the depart angle for the rear. When you had that extra meter sticking out back there. So I was looking at what we had in there, what we had used so far in the trip. And I basically just kind of video called Joe and was like pointing at stuff and being like, do we need this? Do we need this? And I just left a big mountain of stuff in my cousin's garage, basically, so that we could cut down on weight and have a higher chance of success, basically, without having to worry about the extra weight, lowering our range, and or ending up bottomed out on something up in the middle of nowhere, because we had 12 extra boxes of stuff we probably wouldn't use. So,
Was there anything you took off that you did miss?
for the most part,
so.
no. I think the one time, the thing we did remove the whole. I don't know if we're getting ahead of stuff here, but the whole sleeping platform Joe had built, I also removed because we figured we would just stay in tents. And the one night or 2 nights, I guess, we stayed in tents. It was extremely cold, and it would have been nicer to have had the sleeping platform those days, because we ended up sleeping in the car in the driver and passenger seats in the end, which was not as comfortable as the sleeping platform would have been.
Yeah. So like Micah had alluded to, the whole trip took us about 4 weeks. It was about 3 weeks, sorry. But the total time that Micah was gone from home was almost like 5, I think. And yeah, and so having never done this before, one of the things that was super helpful with having this pause in the middle of our trip, like slightly over 2/3 of the way there, was I overpacked to get to Canada. And then once we had this pause in Canada, I wanted us to have time to reevaluate that. So like Micah was a very practical person, far more practical than I am. And for him, just to like throw the car at him and be like, here, it's yours for a week. Like he's going to use it for his things. He actually went camping with it, which we didn't do until the end of the trip coming back. And so it was really easy. It was not hard to let go of things because I knew I was bringing more than I needed. It was just a matter of what.
Right.
I didn't know what to bring. And yeah, like Mike had said, from a storage and space perspective, we weren't expecting the hitch and all that load and stuff to cause the car to bottom out so much. I think we bottomed out like 4 times in Chicago, getting from the airport to visit our friends. Like it was crazy. And so whatever weight we could shed, we kind of basically committed to, we're going to sleep in a hotel if it's too cold or in the car if we're desperate. And so the whole glamping camping situation with the sleeping platform was a no-go just because it was less the weight because it was fairly lightweight wood, but it was more volume. And so by moving stuff off of that rear hitch into the car, we didn't have enough physical space anymore. And I didn't want to use a roof rack because that would affect the range. So it's like everything has to be behind the car aerodynamic wise, or it can't go on the outside. And once we realized
inside, right.
Right. And once we realized that we couldn't keep it on the outside because it was weighing the car down, it had to go physically inside the car. And yeah, by the end of the last third of the trip, we had a pretty good system down. All the camera equipment and other odds and ends that we knew we needed that we actually used, we kept, and the rest we just tossed. Like we had some spare pots and pans. Would have been nice in some areas to have them, but it was totally doable. I mean, I ended up spending, foreshadowing, I don't think I recorded this, but I ended up spending like almost $40 Canadian for a meal in Inuvik because like everything's just super expensive up there. And I wouldn't have had to spend that money if we had brought the extra gear for cooking. But it's just like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, we could have cooked in Inuvik too. It would have just been longer because we would have made one pot of stuff, dumped it into bowls, made another pot of stuff, dumped it on top. Like it would have just been a lot more work, and we were tired, and it was like, money. Let's just use money to solve this problem.
Yes.
I totally forgive you for that. I have made that same call on road trips when I went around Iceland, and I was like, this is going to cost a lot to buy a meal, but it's also that I get an extra hour's sleep.
Yes. Yes.
If it makes you feel any better, and this is a little plug, consider this an advertisement. Transport Evolved have just been invited to Southern California for some reason. I can't think of anything in Southern California that we might want to go and look at. But we're going to be driving down in the F-150 Lightning. So if anybody watching the channel wants to contribute financially to our hotel costs, because I've literally just booked all of the hotels, over $1,000 in hotel costs, please go to patreon.com/Transport Evolved and support the channel there. Now, talking of financial support, you did this on your own dime.
On my own dime.
Right, Joe?
Yep. Yeah.
Have you shared total costs? Are you comfortable sharing total costs?
I am. I have not shared them. I am. Yeah. There's probably some behind the scenes stuff that some viewers might want to know. So Mike and I are also planning to do a Q&A episode after I finish editing everything. And I was going to go into more nerdy details about that. But yeah, if you're asking, I'm happy to share that. So originally the goal was not to do 100% self-funded, but like I said, with the car being gone, I could no longer, for 3 months, I had no time. Like I had some sponsors that I was going to reach out to, and even though like at the time I was a YouTube nobody, had like 3 followers, so I was like, hey, look at, invest in this guy. I was just going to try and like win them over with the story. And I guess quick tangent, like the reason why I haven't been super detailed in a lot of the nerdy stuff regarding this trip. That's because I wanted this to be a story about the adventure and not necessarily about EVs. It was more of like, you can have fun in an EV wherever you are in the world. The infrastructure is there for the most part for just about anything you need to do. And you can do it, more importantly, in a really terrible car, like modernly speaking, like size-wise, charge-wise, it's fine. So what's the story here? And I thought that was compelling enough. And then that car got taken away from me for 3 months, and I just could not justify like reaching out and being like, would you like to sponsor me? I might do it in a gas car if I'm desperate, but you know. And it ended up costing me, if we ignore the cost of the filming, just the actual journey road trip itself, it ended up costing about $5,000. Between all of the, ignoring the airfare for the pause, I'm not including that because that would be an unusual situation. But we spent almost $500 in charging. Most of that 500 was spent after leaving Dawson City, because once we got off the fast chargers, we were just paying people, and they weren't like checking their meter and calculating their rate. They're just, here's a flat fee. So if we needed 5 kilowatts or 500, and they're like, it's $40. Another place, it was a little bit more. It was closer to 200 to Dawson City. Sorry, it was 200 Canadian, so I don't know what that is in US dollars.
That is kind of much like the early days of driving EVs, where you just pull in somewhere and be like, hey, can I charge here? And they'd be like, yeah, give me $10 and you can plug in. And you'd be like, okay.
Would you have any advice to anybody who wants to do this kind of trip in an EV? Like your top 2 tips for people who are wanting to try and do the same thing?
Yeah, my top 2 tips are time. Like, we did this on a really compressed time budget for work and family reasons. Take more time. Like, I would almost be tempted, if money were less of an issue, if I really wanted to do this in an EV, of like driving it up to Whitehorse and parking it there, and then flying back, spending however much time I need, like timing the weather, whatever, and then like planning a real vacation road trip adventure from Whitehorse to do the Arctic Ocean trip. Because while I really enjoyed the road trip from Michigan all the way to the Arctic Ocean and back, my favorite part, no offense to any other parts of the US or Canada, was the Dempster Highway, because it was so otherworldly. It was so much fun to drive on physically, dirt road or not. Like, there was just, it needed more time, and we were just blazing through. Even though we were only traveling like 30 miles an hour the whole way, we were still blazing through it. People would, drive past us going like 60, 70 miles per hour sometimes. And then we would pass them a couple hours later as they're pulled over, setting up their camper on some cool like plot, and just like, but that's how you need to do it. You need to take your time. Don't do it compressed if you can avoid it. And then my second tip is make time. I know I've just repeated myself, but for a whole different reason, because stuff will go wrong. We ended up spending an extra day trying to get home, trying to find a charge, because, again, spoiler, we came home from the Arctic Ocean, or back to the hotel from the Arctic Ocean, and the whole city was without power for a planned power outage. And so because there's no fast chargers, that delayed our level 2 charging by almost like 8 hours. And so we ended up leaving. We had to stay an extra day because we didn't want to leave and drive at night, because the welding shop that we wanted to stop at halfway would obviously be closed at like 2 a.m. And so we were restricted by time because of things going poorly, or not to plan, I should say. Nothing went poorly. Like, we didn't have a negative experience.
It was a very enjoyable trip up so far, based on what I can see.
Yeah, nothing went wrong. Like, there's another person that I think you should talk to who did the trip in a Tesla right after us, I think from Colorado. I can share their info if you're interested. And like, they got to see the most amazing fall colors. Like, I'm so jealous of them. But they had to deal with colder temperatures, and they had like some punctures even before they got to the dirt road. They had some punctures on just the regular highway. Like, a bunch of things went wrong for them. They had budgeted extra time. They weren't in a rush. Whereas with us, like, we just got super lucky, to be honest. Like, we got lucky with weather. We got lucky with no accidents. We got lucky with no, like, blocking us. We got lucky with no problems with the car. Like, everything went very smoothly. The only thing that really affected us was a little bit of snow and a city without power for 8 hours. Speaking of charging really quick, I think one thing that might be lost on people is, even if you do take a faster charging car, once you leave Edmonton and you start heading north, especially into British Columbia and Yukon, most of the chargers max out at 50 or 60 kilowatt hours. So the Bolt was only slow charging from Michigan to Edmonton, and then after that, we were charging at the same speed as the Teslas, as the Kia 9s. Like the infrastructure there is actually really good from like a distribution, but as far as like modern charging technology, it's a little bit outdated. And so I think one of the chargers, which was free at, I think it was Toad River Lodge in British Columbia, was charging at like 20 kilowatt hours at one point, or 25. It was a 25 kilowatt hour charger. So like it was half of what the Bolt's capable of, up until 50%. So that forced us to travel slow and explore, which we enjoyed. And then ironically, once we switched to level 2 charging, which was even slower, we ran out of time and couldn't explore. It was just this weird dichotomy, or weird paradox, I should say.
We interviewed Harvey Soysha a couple of years ago, didn't we, Kate, where we talked about his road trip, Marianne's Electric Drive, which he did in originally in memory of his late wife. And he took an Audi all over the US and Canada, and he talked about similar kind of experiences finding charging. Did you find that the experience of not having a choice about fast charging actually was in some ways a little releasing? Because like you instead of going, oh, I've got to fast charge and then I've got to get here, you're like, okay, I'm here, I have to slow charge, I have 6 hours.
Yeah, 100%. Can't speak for Micah on that per se, but since I was planning out the route, like I thought about this over and over and over and over again for months. And yeah, I was pretty like worried, like what's my plan A, what's my plan B for when there's more than one choice. But when you have no choice, you've only got one rather. Like
right.
It's like it's either going to happen or it's not. It was so much easier. Like I relaxed, other than that first first couple of hours on the Dempster where you could see we were like super visibly tense. Once we got past that threshold where like we knew we were going to make it, it's like literally in some ways it's all downhill from here, because everywhere else, that was the hardest, longest part of the trip, and the most questionable, like would we make it? And as soon as we got to Eagle Plains, it's like it's easy from here. Like it may take an extra day, it may take 4 hours, who knows, who cares? We'll just embrace the journey as it comes.
So I was just gonna say, one of the things that's really interesting listening to you talking about charging is how much it feels in a way like a reflection of the discussions about charging that happened in the early 1900s when EVs were really new. And you get a lot of like in the journals of the automotive journals of the time where they're like how you travel around the US, and they're talking about the fact that you may not find a gas station in a town, but there'll be a farm there and they'll have some electricity, so you can go pull in at the farm and pay for your electricity in labor or whatever. Or if you're a fine lady, obviously not. But yeah, it's just a really interesting reflection that you've kind of managed to revisit this period of history now.
You are onto something there, because there were two things that I picked up from the trip that made me smile. The first one is, I hope, Micah, that you and Joe are going to make a book of this, because I know that you made lots of photos. You took lots of photos on your trip. I assume you are a photographer.
Not professionally, but we're both hobbyists.
Yeah. So many, many photos were taken.
There was some sort of snarky remark about someone's manual focus lenses.
Yes.
There was a lot of tweaking going on there with the with the cameras.
So how many photos did you take? Have you published them? Are they on like a platform or anything?
I've shared some of them on like my social media, but that's personal and closed and everything like that. So it's like friends and family have seen them, but the world at large, not really.
Definitely should put a book together.
That's very reassuring, because that's something that I would like to do. I mean, as anyone who's eagerly anticipating the finale episode, and then I plan a little like encore episode after that, of our trip coming back home. as you may have noticed, it's taken me a while to get each episode out. I recorded over 16 terabytes of video / audio on this trip. Now, some of it was because I was using fancy cameras for various reasons, but I wanted to make sure I had enough to work with so that I could, you can always make things worse. You can't make things better when you don't have what you don't have.
Right.
And just going back to what you were saying before we started recording, Nikki, like I bought a Blackmagic camera because in my experimentation, I was worried about cameras overheating. So like the GoPro is overheated, my iPhone, which I was using for overheated. I could buy a nice Lumix and it could overheat. I could buy a Sony and it could overheat, unless I bought like the FX, cinema ones. And so within my budget range, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema worked perfectly because it's got a fan. It uses micro four thirds lenses, so I can use my existing camera lenses. I don't have to invest a bunch of money. And then it's got all, the external professional inputs and stuff. And so I used this camera the most on the trip to record just long whatevers, and that used a bunch of my storage media as a result. But it was 100% reliable. I had zero issues with it other than having to adjust the visual, the neutral density filter a little bit as our exposure changed. And when it comes to like photos and stuff, we took, I don't remember if you've calculated yours, between the two of us and in my Lightroom catalog, because we shared our photos, we have roughly like 4,000 something photos. Now, as I sort of mocked Micah for, a lot of his were missed focus because he was using some lenses. I enjoyed watching him try to wrangle lenses that were not intended to be used the way he was using them. And he's got some really good photos in there. Some of the ones that I've used in the videos, you wouldn't have expected them to come out, and they were perfect. So it was very light joshing on my part there. But I 100% want to do a low photo book. I'm thinking about finding, like I'd like to do it. So again, full disclosure, I spent almost between $4,000 and $5,000 at the end of the day to do this trip. I am fortunate enough in the position that I can use those savings for my own enjoyment. I didn't have to like take a loan or anything out.
Right.
And I would feel better if I did go through the effort of making a photo book, which I want to do, to publish, of finding a indigenous community charity who can work with people in that area, because there's so many needs up there that the government can't meet. And
right.
We'll learn some things in the next episode about some of the darker areas of Canada's history. And how they affected Indigenous people. And so part of me would just like, if I'm going to go to the effort of making a book and actually like selling it for other people to use, I don't really want the profits for it. Like it'd be nice to have, but I would feel so much better having pumped out a decent amount of clean carbon to get there and whatnot, to just, I don't know, like give back a little bit. So for those who are interested, there will be one eventually, probably in the spring when I've had time to sit and edit it after I'm done with the video. But the video has been taking up, between life, family, and work, the video's taken up most of my spare time this year since getting back.
That's really lovely to hear. I don't know much about the northern Indigenous folk in Canada. My family can trace its roots back to Micmac in eastern Canada, on my mum's side. So I know that is making sure that voices can be heard is so very, very important, and helping those voices lift themselves or be lifted is very, very important indeed. There is a question, though, that I have for Micah, which is a bit of a reoccurring joke, I think. At least I hear it as a joke in the videos that I've seen thus far. And bear in mind, I think we're at episode 4, episode 5 at the moment in the series.
5, yeah.
As of the time of recording. Micah, can you explain to me why Gilgamesh on a long road trip?
It's an epic trip. I have a bunch of books on my bookshelf that I've been meaning to read,
Right.
and I've like randomly grabbed 5 of them and threw them in my suitcase on the way to Chicago, and that one was on the top of the pile, and it's like, I should
Right.
read this. It's an important book historically.
I just think it's great. You just randomly start reading chapters of Gilgamesh to Joe while you're driving along.
But I was reading it, and Joe looked kind of bored and needed to stay awake, and it was like, should I read you the Epic of Gilgamesh out loud? Because we're not going to get sued for putting in the video.
That is safe. Yeah, it is. It is copyright-free
In
content.
public domain.
Good job.
Maybe this is a business opportunity for Micah, but I would listen to more of his recordings because he actually, in my opinion, has a really good like read out loud voice. Like it was really engaging. The intonation was good. Like I wish I could read that effectively out loud. I feel like I'm a lot more monotone and yeah, it was very engaging. I did not fall asleep a single time.
Do we hear any other epics read? Like, do we maybe get to Homer, or is it just Gilgamesh?
I mean, if we want to do another epic trip together, I'm sure he'll pull out another book.
Beowulf or the Odyssey or something.
Haven't planned any additional trips, so I can't promise any future books at this time.
I did have right underneath it in the suitcase was now I can't remember what the title of it was, but it's the first Chinese novel written. And so if we'd have ran out of Gilgamesh, we could have moved on to that.
Because people ask me, and I don't know what you all watch on YouTube, but a lot of the content I watch on YouTube is focused around people experiencing things or people making things. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in, like, obviously AI generated craft and influence. I absolutely hate watching influencer content because it's just so 100%. Draining of your soul. So I watch a lot of my favorites right now. I'm watching Itchy Boots, Nora Lee. She's been riding her motorbike around the world for years. I watch Mark Rides or Mark's Adventures. I can't remember what his channel is called. The German guy who rode around on a Zero and is currently riding through India with his friend on a KTM motorbike. I also watch the wonderful Eric, I can't think of his last name, who is riding. This is a guy who started like in BC. I'm going to learn how to ride a motorbike and then ride it around the world. And he's got to Central Europe. And he just like,
wow.
I love watching these kind of adventures because it's all about the journey and the experience and finding out what those people think of the world that they are existing in. Mm-hmm. And I think what drew me to your story was exactly that same of thing, but also the little hints that you keep dropping throughout your videos that make me go, I could sit down and have a beer with these guys. I think they are on the same wavelength. And it's those little nerdy touches that you keep dropping in, which is why I found the Gilgamesh thing so perfect. It wasn't like, look at us, we're driving a fancy electric car somewhere. It's like, we're just two friends going on a really long road trip, and maybe it's stupid, but we're going to have fun on the way. So I want to congratulate you for that. I don't know if that's the vibe that you intended, but it's definitely the vibe that I got. I don't know if Kate got anything similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't... Like, I'm going to say something terrible as a YouTuber. I don't really actually watch very much YouTube anymore. I used to watch a lot more, and then, like, recommendations got awful, and life got busy, and so I don't actually watch very much. But it reminds me, I used to read Elspeth Beard, I think, and then there's someone else there was another woman who rode around Europe and Africa on some crappy little motorbike that she bought after she split up with a guy, and she was like, you know what, I'm just going to go. Bye. And what I like is the experience, like being along with someone doing something incredible and cool and interesting, and them sharing like a bit of their life and also the experiences that they have along the way, the people they meet along the way, and what it's meant for them. And a lot of the content we get now is not like that. So it's really refreshing to see stuff like yours where it actually is like it's long form content with your experience. That's like human connection stuff, which is, the stuff I find really interesting.
It's authentic, right? I mean, social media types throw around authenticity like it's some kind of buzzword, which I suppose it is. But, when seeing content like this, that is what it is really about. It's about experiencing those journeys and sharing them with other people, because not everybody has the ability to take a few weeks off work to be able to do those kind of trips. So I'm just so grateful that you've been able to do this so other people can live vicariously through your adventure. I hope you keep doing it. Where can people find out more about what you're doing? Obviously, we'll link to the channel. You have a mastodon. You're a cool kid. You have a mastodon. That is, again, that was another point on the, is this a cool person? Tell us where people can find out more about your adventures, guys.
Sure. Real quick before I answer that, I just want to go back. So, I mean, it makes me really happy to hear that you picked up on all that. That was very intentional, all these little gags and gifts and all these little gags and just silly things that I've done. I really wanted it to reflect the experience of being stuck in a car with one of your best friends for a month. I feel like I nailed it. Like, even though, some of the camera equipment and stuff wasn't, there are some parts that I would have loved to have had in the video that we just weren't able to film because of whatever reason. But overall, if we tie it back to like Charlie and Ewan again, I don't know if I'm Charlie or Ewan, but like those guys, even though they're celebrities, they made those journeys really relatable. I felt like I was best friends with each of them while watching that. And it was my hope that, someone else who might be stuck at home for whatever reason, even if they're just like too tired at the end of the day to go out and do something, that you can sit back and enjoy the same stuff that I enjoy, which is knowing that, people are out there just experiencing life without a script, without a plan, without a sponsor, and just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Well, and I mean, to a point, I think we went for that vibe because it was the vibe we could go for too. I mean, I don't think we had necessarily we could have made we probably couldn't have made a like super comprehensive see every possible thing there is to see, every stop, like 5 camera angles of everything, video of it. So like the genuine authentic us is the us we were capable of giving, because when you're driving for 18 hours in a row, you can't pretend to be someone else.
No.
And we know that all too well. I mean, I think...
Yeah, I don't, are there any videos that we did from when we used to drive down to CES? I don't know that we ever filmed anything in the car. Probably
Well, I mean, we did do a behind the scenes, but it was kind of that... It was that same kind of, 3 hours, let alone 3 days, let alone 3 weeks in a car with your team members. And, you do end up having to have that level of intimacy with your friends to be able to just coexist in that space. I mean, I'm saying that as Kate, Kate very kindly put me up in her house for way longer than I think she probably should have done.
Come and stay for a few weeks. Months later.
Somehow our friendship survived, and I think that's what you guys have cemented. This long-standing friendship, like you say, like Ewan and Charlie, that ability just to exist in the moment and be in the moment and enjoy the journey. And my hope, it's Christmas. We're looking towards next year now. We've got one week. My God, 1 week away from 2026.
Yep.
And we live in a world right now where there's so much I'm going to call it co-opted hate, because I don't think many people are capable of true hate. I think a lot of the hate that we're experiencing is co-opted by the select few. But I think moving forwards, we need more content like this to remind people of what is really important, that people's lives are very different around the world and people's existences are all valid but very different. But at the same time, you had those shared connections, and that's something that came through as, again, the people you met and the shared connections that you bonded over, albeit briefly, to then continue on your paths in different directions. And do you have anything else planned for 2026?
Oh, yes. I'm not going to talk about it because, again, just like the Arctic Ocean, maybe it won't work out. I'm less worried about like the goal not working out than I am about not being able to start the goal. Like if I can start this, if we don't finish, we don't finish. That's going to be recorded and it'll be up there. It'll be fine. So yeah, no promises at the moment. I also have a photo book to work on apparently. So
well, I happen to know a couple of publishers, so
really?
you know.
Oh, let's talk then. Yeah. I'd love to connect and meet more people.
You've actually inspired me to want to try and get my bike back on the road. So my bike turns 20 years old next year.
Oh, nice.
2027.
Mm-hmm.
And in the back of my head, I'm like, wouldn't it be fun if I rode it from the West Coast to the East Coast? And of course, in the America that I exist in right now, there's a big, huge swathe of America that I don't necessarily want to comfortably go into. But I'm like, I don't live that far from the Canadian border.
Mm-hmm.
And my bike was made in the Northeast. And I have a Canadian passport. Mm-hmm. I could just go into Canada.
The Trans-Canada Highway is amazing. That's another one I would love to do as well.
Exactly.
Coast to coast Canada, coast to coast US. Yeah.
Yeah. It's well worth it.
You do that and I'll get Rebecca going and we'll do them together. We do it together in separate vehicles without murdering each other.
Somewhere in the middle of, I think we'd probably give it until somewhere in the middle of the Rockies, Kate. I think we'd probably survive somewhere in Alberta.
Fine, as long as we don't have to be in the same car for that long.
I love you, Kate. You're amazing. You're like a sister to me. And I'm glad you're 130 miles away from me right now.
We are like sisters. That's how we are.
If anyone is capable of absolutely going crazy, spending time in a car, like siblings in a car together, I feel like that just the fact that you can't do that shows that you are like sisters.
Yeah.
We can.
Well, we have done it.
We've done like a week and a half together all the time, all day. Or most of the night.
Yeah.
And it's like,
But you know your limit. That's the important part.
That is our limit. So you guys are better than us because you managed to do it for 4 weeks.
I blame Micah for that. He's so easygoing. I'm sure I annoyed him a lot more than he annoyed you.
I live with people who are so much more annoying than you that I have a very high annoyance tolerance.
So, Joe, I'm sure you've got a lot planned for next year. Tell us a little bit about where people can find out about you.
If you want to have bidirectional communication, the best way would probably be Mastodon. I check Blue Sky very rarely, and Mastodon would be the primary place. But my website, quigs.quest, yes, I have a newsletter, but I feel like that's the easiest way to get things out without having to go through some middleware platform like YouTube or Substack. So if you're willing to share your email address, I'm not going to harvest it for anything. And I would like to use that, not necessarily more of a blogging perspective, but there's some things that are fun that I think, going back to what you were saying, Nikki, about, there's some nerdy things here. If you've enjoyed the videos, and you enjoy reading or just seeing pictures, I plan to share some more things that may not be YouTube video worthy on there as time goes on. Every so sometimes, I think, would be my motto for that. It's not going to be a weekly thing, a daily thing. It'll just be here and there if you want to hear from me. That's the best way to do it.
Whenever you feel it is worthy of note, that's when you're going to tell people.
I love not being committed to a schedule.
Right, and that is a goal that I think everybody should do. Micah, do you have any socials to share?
Not really. I'm not really publicly on social media, but I hope to start putting stuff on YouTube at some point. Don't really have anything there now, so I'll try and convince Joe to share my YouTube whenever I have it up. So just follow him, and then whenever he shares mine, you can follow me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, both of you. Happy holidays, whatever you are celebrating. I hope that you have some time set aside for those people important to you in your life. And I hope that's true for everybody watching as well. We're going to be back in January with normal content if we ever do make normal content. I hope that you enjoy some of the other stuff that we've got planned. Normally at this time of year, we do like a year in review. We do like a bloopers reel. Several of you have requested a certain border collie make an appearance and do a video for the holidays. She would love to. I would not love her to do that, and not everybody who watches the channel wants to watch her, so I've kind of been keeping her off at the side, and sometimes she'll make an appearance. But, you know, maybe if we can increase our Patreon members by another couple of hundred, maybe I'll get her to do a full piece at some point. It's complicated, but we do have other great content set up. And moving on into 2026, we have some really big goals, and that is to continue pushing cleaner, greener, safer, smarter, and more equitable transport and energy, but also encouraging you all watching to get involved, to make stuff, to mod stuff, to learn new skills, and not to let like some big corporation determine what your next choice is. If you own it, you should be able to fix it. You should be able to modify it. If you want to get nerdy, we are hoping to engage your inner nerd. So this last couple of months, we've done a lot of stuff with the F-150 Lightning. We've got some more stuff planned with the Chevrolet Bolt. We're going to put a new screen in the Bolt. We're also going to do some other mods that we have planned. Kate is doubling down a little bit on the Rebecca project next year. And that takes a lot of time and energy, but it's stuff that you all want us to do. You hopefully by this point will have seen the studio tour where I told you all about some of this stuff going on behind me and some of the bike project stuff. But I think if we are to continue to exist and to continue to promote cleaner, greener, safer and smarter transportation into 2026 and beyond, we need to stop kind of looking towards the big corporations because, frankly, late stage capitalism. So, whoever you are, whoever you love, have an amazing week. Have an amazing new year. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. Keep evolving.
Thanks for watching today. You can connect with us on Patreon, Discord, Mastodon, Blue Sky, or through our website. Massive thanks to the amazing folks scrolling by right now. You are the reason we can stay independent and keep making content without corporate influence. Want to see your name listed here too? Support starts at just $1.50 a month, and you can now even gift memberships. And of course, a massive welcome to our newest members: Adam B., Andrew Brown, Tiara Graves, Philip Jackson, Dieter Mulhop, Noor Naif, Annie Onimus, Todd Plenis, Barus Sharati, Andrei Starsky, Ralph Stultz, Richard Teague, Triple A He Lisa Vargi, Vicky Morales, Magpie Motors, and Travis Whitman. Thank you for joining up to support the channel. At this particular time in history when everyone's feeling the pinch, we are so grateful that you've joined the team, and that allows us to keep making great content. If you'd like to join them, you'll find our Patreon link below, or you can sign up via YouTube. If you're signing up for Patreon though, please go to the Patreon website. Do not use the Apple or Google app, since both take a big cut that hurts your wallet and reduces the income we receive. Prefer a one-off contribution? We've got Ko-fi, Bitcoin, a PO box, our swag store, and even an Amazon affiliate link, all great ways to make sure your money helps us. We post new videos every few days on the main channel, plus extras over on TE Take 2. And since YouTube comments, while open, aren't safe for us, the best way to chat with the team is through Patreon, Mastodon, Blue Sky, or our website, or in fact, our Discord chat. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we'd love you to check out this one instead. Be awesome, be kind, be intentional, and never forget to resist. Keep evolving.